Welcome to a brand new episode of Into the Pages. We are in this episode are starting Jim Butcher's book, The Aeronauts Windlass. And we're super excited about this because, as we've mentioned before, Jim Butcher is one of our top authors. So let's get into it. How do you feel about this book after reading The Shadow of What Was Left?
Much better.
Do you feel like you were sick and now this is your medicine or something?
I really like the picture, the Aeronauts Windlass. It shows kind of what a ship looks
What the
like.
ship looks like, yeah.
It kind of looks like it doesn't really look like a flying ship. Like, have you seen the movie Stardust?
Yeah.
How they fly, it looks like just a normal sailboat that can fly.
This one's got sails on the bottom, though.
Yeah, it's got sails on the bottom and the side and the top.
Oh, you know on the side? I missed the side ones.
Yeah, you can kind of see in like the other picture. Looks like there's 4 of them. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, the Aeronauts Windlass
I agree, it is cool.
is what we're reading today. A story about civilizations that live on spires, and the spires are like these huge, massive, colossal towers that have societies all within them on their own, and they're terrified of the surface world. I don't know why. They've just kind of mentioned they mentioned kind of like surface creatures and how they're like, they get into the ventilation shafts, you have to kill them or they'll kill you.
Oh, okay.
And like anyone who goes to the surface is like crazy and like die terrible deaths.
Sounds
And
great.
So
I'd be inspired too.
yeah, but our story doesn't focus on the surface world, but rather something else, which we'll get into more on today's episode, but later.
Yeah, later. I was really intrigued by the prologue. Got some things in there that make you ask questions, which, well, a lot of authors do that. There was a couple things that I thought was interesting to see, and I'm curious what the heck it all means. First was like there's the captain, whatever his name is.
Esterbrook.
He's wearing silk, and apparently silk does something to where that
Yes.
Gwen had to aim her also interesting weapon at his face because I guess the silk will negate it somehow. So silk has some unique properties other than just being clothing.
Yes. So in this world, they have what are called crystals, and they have different sized crystals. They use them for weapons and called gauntlets. And they're kind of like shoot like energy bursts. And for whatever reason, silk, if it's really good silk, will disperse the energy. And they also have really huge crystals that powers airships and other smaller crystals within the ships that kind of help with maneuverability. So it's actually a really interesting idea that Jim Butcher has come up with, which I think it added some cool aspects to the story because after the prologue, we'll get there in a second, but we meet an airship captain named Captain Grimm, and led by his ship flying through the skies in the clouds, and all of that is made possible by these crystals. And the first character we meet is Gwendolyn Margaret Elizabeth Lancaster.
She's got quite a name.
And
I don't know if they have like necessary royalty, but she's like royalty.
Yes, she's one of the more important houses, noble people on Spire. They live on a spire called Albion. There's a bunch of different spires, and it kind of makes them out to be like countries almost. Like each spire is a different country. There's kind of like a tenuous piece between them all. But the Lancasters have their claim to nobility and fame because they make crystals. We kind of alludes at it in the prologue because Gwen wants to join the Spire Guard, which is apparently a tradition among noble people. Her mother's trying. Turns out her mom wants her to join, but
Yeah.
she knows that Gwendolyn is stubborn, and so she says she tells Captain Esterbrook after Gwen leaves that she's like, I know that she would only stick with it if she thought that I didn't want her to do it.
Classic reverse psychology.
So Gwen thought she was being all strong, and it turns out her mom was just totally manipulating her.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. But anyways, they kind of mentioned the Vattery. We'll get more into what that is later in the story, but the Vattery is basically where they grow crystals, and the Lancasters grow the best crystals around. And it makes it seem like it's everywhere, not just Spire Albion. And so that's kind of where they get their...
Yeah, I'm sure with like kind of makes me think. I haven't read far enough to know for sure, but I would imagine that the crystals power more than just the ships. They probably power a lot of stuff. So crystals are probably a very hot commodity.
Yes, and they mention this later. What makes them so valuable is the larger crystals can take hundreds of years to grow and to make. And so it makes, since they're so needed in airships and other things, it makes them practically priceless, because if you break one or lose one, gotta wait 100 years to get another one. And so
So you
it's a
pretty
big
much
deal.
just be dead.
Yeah, so it's a big deal. I also think it's cool with their gauntlets, how they aim, is they hold up their hand and they aim between their fingers. Like, I don't know if they're going like this, but they always say aim between my fingers. So they're like,
Don't they talk about do they aim between all the fingers or just like their?
I don't know if it's those two or if it's like that. It doesn't really
I can't remember what they said. Did they say forefinger and thumb, or did they? I always thought I was picturing her like this, like take that.
I just picture them like this and like kind of just like line it up.
Yeah, that's kind of cool though. I think
makes it straight.
because you never really hear about people aiming magic, so this is kind of cool. It's probably not technically magic. I think this is.
I think it kind of is. I don't know if it explains it really in the prologue that much, but in order to make a gauntlet work, you have to will it to work. It's not like a trigger.
Okay, yeah. So this
So it's like
definitely
tied to your will, and you can
got some
activate it somehow, which is pretty cool.
That's right. I remember that.
And we'll get more into what that means when we meet a crazy group of people called the Etherealists. But we haven't met them yet, so I will not get into it. But so the prologue we have set up with the Lancaster family. They're important for building crystals. It's a tradition to go serve in the military, and Gwen's mother wants Gwen to serve in the military or the Spire Guard to gain real life experience and real life knowledge on why what they do is so important. So there are good reasons behind it.
Surprisingly, usually it's
We learn later on,
that.
later on these chapters we're talking about today, that Gwen's kind of your stereotypical, arrogant, nose in the air, thinks she knows everything noblewoman. and she's kind of smart, and she's really bold and confident, but she ends up causing sometimes more trouble than she thinks when she's trying to solve something. But that's the prologue. We get kind of the setup of a little bit of this world, and then I don't know. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
That pretty much covers it.
Oh, one thing to mention, I guess, gauntlets seem fairly powerful. Gwen's she blasts a door down, and she blasts a statue. So it seems like they're definitely stronger than our conventional.
Yeah. Apparently, her mother blasted like 3 doors down or something to get out. And so it sounds like a similar story with her mother. Like she wanted to go serve, but her mother maybe didn't want her to. Anyway, but yeah, they definitely seem quite powerful.
Yes, and then we meet our next main character in chapter 1, Captain Grimm. He is the captain of an Albion merchant ship, again in quotes,
Don't they call them
called Predator.
Right, I thought they called themselves privateers, but
Yeah, privateers. They are privateers, but then the chapter heading says Albion merchant ship Predator.
oh,
And so they are private. They work for hire, but they only work essentially for Albion, and so they're still loyal to Albion. We learn later on that Grimm used to be in the fleet. Something happened. It's not really clear what that made him essentially be dishonorably discharged. But he has his own ship. He has a group of men. They're all super good at what they do. They're really capable, and basically what they're doing is there's another spire. I forget what it's called now.
the Auroran?
Yeah, Spire Aurora. That they're kind of at tensions with right now. Like they're not at war, but there's kind of like all the signs are kind of pointing towards some sort of conflict.
Yeah.
And Predator's role in that is the Predator's been preying on merchant vessels of the Auroran fleet.
Yes.
In this chapter, the
Auroran fleet is finally trying to stop him from getting there, and he definitely does seem like he's already an established character, if that's how you say it. Like he's not some noob. I mean, if you can tell by the fact that he was called Captain Grimm, but
yeah, actually, I really like that.
Pretty experienced.
That Jim Butcher did that, because there's a lot of characters that we'll meet, and most of them are kind of in that new character.
They're young and not experienced.
Coming of age type character. But Grimm has been throughout the whole story is like this foundation of experience and calmness and level-headedness that I think adds a good level of depth to the story.
Yeah.
And like makes it, I don't know, it takes it to the next level.
I
really
like the
enjoyed this
change too. It kind of gets tedious. I think it's like you think of The Shadow of What Was Lost, how like all of the main characters were like coming of age, new, naive, and unexperienced and stuff like that. So I definitely like when they add in a main character that is learned and experienced and all that.
And this book does kind of have an epic fantasy tinge to it, as in there's like, I think there's like 4 or 5 different characters that we kind of cycle through their perspectives, but it tends to focus on Captain Grimm, another character we haven't met yet called Bridget, and a little bit from Gwen, but we get different perspectives from everyone. So it kind of has like a tinge of epic fantasy in that sense. But we learn about these cool ships.
Yeah.
These airships, again, they're powered somehow by a big crystal to float. And that crystal powers everything from their weapons to how they fly. And they have like etheric webs or something that go out that provide like steering and stability. And they have like up and down, and they can like twirl and like pretty much fly like an airplane, but they're like a big ship with sails.
I don't remember if they mentioned. Do they have like gravity?
Yeah, because if the lift crystal goes out, they just
lift crystal. That's right.
And they also have force fields, which is pretty cool. They call it the shroud.
Yes, I like that too. Like you just call something that's well known a different name.
Yeah. So they have these really cool ships, and there's different classes. Predator is kind of like a light, fast ship. I can't really take a beating, but it's quick. But they have like great huge warships that have like 3 or more crystals and armor and crazy shrouds, obviously meant for war. So there's like all these sorts of different things. But what we get is that this scene of Predator has spotted its prey and is going to try to take this merchant ship. And we kind of learned a little bit about the crew. First, we have the XO, kind of like the first mate. His name is Creedy, and he is currently being disciplined by the fleet, and he's required to work with Grimm. And he's kind of stiff. He's very protocol driven.
Yeah.
But he seems capable. He seems like he knows what he's doing. I did like how Jim wrote this book, in the sense that Captain Grimm, he delegates orders to Creedy, but I wasn't sure how I would like this, but I ended up liking it actually quite a bit, because throughout the story, Grimm will say, okay, we need to do this, this, and this. Creedy, make sure it happens. And then all Jim Butcher says is, Creedy went away shouting out orders. And so I think that really opened up an avenue for Jim Butcher to not have to be super accurate on how ships work and have to try to figure that out, and rather be able to have more focus on the story and the characters, which I thought worked out quite well.
Yeah.
And left like an opening up for the imagination that I actually quite enjoyed. So instead of being focused on like Creedy, you'd be like, instead of taking a whole page, be like, Creedy yelled, hoist the mainsails, hey, over there, do this and tighten that. It was just Grimm giving overall orders, and then Creedy going and executing that, and the men just knowing what they're doing. And so, but Grimm's crew's kind of made up of like ex-fleet people, ex-military type guys. They have like that military discipline, that military capability, but they also have like that kind of loose nature of just like like mercenary type fleet. Like they kind of talk back to Grimm, and Creedy gets offended at several times. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna let him talk about like," because they call the engineer down. They're like, "Engineer, we need to do this and this," and he's like, you can't do that to my ship." And Creedy's like, "You're gonna let him talk to you like that?" And he's like, "He's the best there is." And so there's like kind of like that repertoire where you have like the captain that's like really good at what he does, has the absolute loyalty of his men. They trust him, and they like will do anything for him, but they kind of talk
still
back.
give him lip.
They kind of give him lip, but like surreptitiously sometimes. And then Creedy's kind of
like, he's like, "You better court-martial him."
And I also like how Grimm, he has that calmness of a captain. And he mentioned several times, he's like, the men have to see their captain as calm and collected and absolutely sure that everything that he's going to is gonna be all right. And so he has like years of experience, which is really nice to see in a character, especially because I think a lot of the books we've been reading has been, I think that's just like the common way to read a book.
It's super common. That's actually one reason why I really liked reading Mistborn Era 2, because you meet Holy crap.
Waxilium.
Yeah, Waxilium.
Waxilium Ladrian.
And he's middle-aged. He's in his 40s. So I like that, what Brandon did with that, where like you already get this character's experience, and you have this whole new thing where he's like, his body's getting older, so he's like, oh, I'm not as young as I used to be.
Yeah, I think Grimm and Waxilium are very similar characters as far as like mannerisms and like experience.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about Grimm, going up a little bit, is he is a respectable character, I think, but he also at the same time kind of doesn't take crap because of like the politics of the higher houses and stuff, which I think adds to the goodness of this. But we'll get to what he does, and I'll talk about it.
Yeah, because we're kind of trying to, like, something happened to Grimm in his past a few years ago that got him dishonorably discharged, and it kind of makes it seem like it wasn't his fault, but because of politicking, he took the blame and got discharged.
That's kind of how I feel. The way that we've seen when we get Bridget's point of view, and even later with Grimm, it kind of seems like there's all these ridiculous politics with the higher houses and how things should be, and like, oh, you can't do this because of this stupid reason. So I'm wondering if that is kind of how it is. We're gonna see if that's Grimm is a good man, even though he's rough.
You kind of get all of that just on, like, because the whole scene is set up in chapter 1 that they have kind of just going through this banter. You kind of get an idea of the crew, and then they start to attack the ship. And how they attack is they fly above, and then they do a crazy dive. And when they dive, the ship like makes noises, and apparently each ship has like a distinct noise, which is kind of cool, and it's like the ship speaking. But anyway, it's pretty cool. They do is they dive, and then they shoot their cannons as they dive past, which is an interesting tactic and apparently a common one. But unfortunately, the Auroran ship was expecting them, and it was actually a trap.
Yes,
because they thought they were getting surprised, but the other merchant ship's shroud was up, so their first pass didn't do any damage. But they did something really cool where they went underneath the ship, and then did what they call ripple fire, which I thought was pretty cool, which is where all the cannoneers shoot in the same spot over and over and over. So like the first goes a little bit through the shroud, and the second one goes a little bit more until they finally break through the shroud. It's like kind of like focusing their attack on like one spot until they like break through, which is interesting that worked without like totally breaking down the shroud, because the shroud's still up, but you still kind of break through in just like one spot.
Yeah, I guess that shows that Grimm's crew is actually super skilled, because I'm sure that's a super hard.
Yeah, because Grimm even says in his mind they had like seconds.
Yeah,
they just instinctively did it, and so it's not like I don't even know if he called out ripple fire. They just did it.
I think that even shows us how close Grimm is with like his crew. Like they know him so well, and he knows them so well that they just know what to do without getting any orders and stuff.
Oh, another thing to note, since these are airships and they're going to be going all sorts of directions, they have pretty interesting safety lines. So it's like this whole harness that you rig up when they call general quarters, which is like everyone mustered to battle. They have to have 3 different safety lines hooked up, and they're around a harness that connects to, like, if you're down below, to like the ceiling, the wall, and the floor, or if you're up, just like 3 different places on the ground, and that kind of like holds you in place. Which I thought was pretty cool. But
I still had the hardest time not picturing the. Oh my gosh, I'm not remembering names today. What's that movie? Treasure Planet. In Treasure Planet, when they similar thing where they fly ships in space. It's slightly different.
Yeah.
But they have those lines too. That's what I kept picturing. It was just like a regular rope.
But instead of like attached to the main mast, there's like poles that kind of go all throughout the ship that you attach a ring to it, so you can still like move around and it follows you.
Yeah. Which is perfect, because I think in this pretty far advanced technologically world would have something clever like that, instead of just like, oh, you're stuck in this one position.
But unfortunately, like we're saying, it was a trap, and the destroyer class of the Auroran fleet shows up, and it's the ASA Itasca, I think, or something like that.
That's what I said, Itasca.
And it's like a bad enemy ship, like specifically designed to chase down and destroy ships like Grimm's. And so it's just as fast as Grimm's ship, but it has way more firepower, way more armor.
Yeah.
And they like rip into Predator. They like almost destroy Predator. And Luckily, they narrowly escape and like
Yeah,
limp away. Because how this world works is there's like a prevalent shroud of mist. And if you get above there's like the sun and the mist, but apparently it's a common tactic to go beneath the mist because you can't track. It's like so thick, you can't track ships when they go down there. So they're able to escape by going through the mist, but like barely, and they limp back to Spire
Yeah,
Albion.
they even lost a few men. Their shroud was knocked out, which is interesting. I guess the shroud is not something they keep up at all times. I would think that it'd be powered on, but I guess maybe they need to not drain their crystals or something. Maybe we'll find out. But
Yeah, because crystals like they can take a beating, but not too much of a beating.
there was something that they mentioned in this chapter. And we didn't get to see anything because the next time we see Grimm, he's back at the Spire. But
We do learn some things. I think it's important to know about crystals and ships. Because when they're trying to escape Itasca, they have to do like some crazy maneuvers, and they say that the crystals are like so powerful that because how they do it is they just instantly drop the ship, and they say that does not necessarily have a lot of strain, but when you try to reverse that fall, the strain from the crystals trying to reverse it can tear the ship apart.
yeah, honestly, because I mean it's like all of that weight. This ship probably weighs a good few tons.
Yeah, so you have to you have to be careful.
Yeah. Anyway, they in the mist that they go through, they have just what they call a mist maw, and apparently they're big enough to eat a ship.
Yeah,
but we don't get to see much of them in this or the next time we see Grimm. But I would imagine we'll see them down the road, but I don't know yet.
For me, who has finished the book, I will not tell you.
Good, thank you.
So anyways, I finished the book because my wife and I recently took a trip to Arizona, and so I had like a total of like 20 hours, not all at once, but like driving there and driving back. It's 10 hours each way to just read.
A lot of reading time.
Read and listen to the audiobook. So it's good enough that I finished this book in like 3 days. 4 days, essentially, time of reading. So very good. Anyway, so also, in addition to like their crystal, the crystal like also provides momentum, like maneuverability. But if you lose that, they also can use their sails and flow by the wind, which is what they have to do to get back to Albion.
Which is interesting because I don't know how that would work. Regular sails of a ship making you fly.
I don't know either.
But it's okay. It's a fantasy book. We'll just go with it.
It does explain it a little later, but we'll hold off on that explanation right now. Anyway, that's how chapter 2 ends. And then chapter 3, we meet our next main character, Bridget Tagwin. Tagwin is like an ancient noble house. Apparently, that was like a really famous admiral that did like a lot of great, amazing feats. But
was it her dad?
No, it was like her great grandpa or something like that. Like it's been several generations. I remember even longer than that because like when they're talking about it, it almost seems like it's like when Spire Albion was first formed or something. So they're like an old house, but they're like down on their luck. So right now it's just her and her dad are essentially the last members of Tagwin. They own what's essentially a butchery, but it doesn't really explain how, but they grow their meat, which seems really like they grow it in vats.
Yeah, how that.
So it's not like a living. It's not like they don't butcher animals.
They don't have
like,
cows hanging up in there.
They're growing it somehow.
They got a meat plant.
And Bridget has a really cool friend named Roel.
Oh, I said Raoul, but
that's what I thought it was until I listened to the.
But the audiobook says Roel.
Roel.
Okay. I very much like Roel.
Yes.
He is the classic sidekick minion, whatever you want to call it. That I'm just like, you should come with me.
Yes. So Roel is a cat, but he is a cat prince. His dad Maul is like the clan leader of landing. No, what's it called? Habel Morning. So the spire is kind of broken up into sections. Like the higher and lower you go, there's different Habels, which are essentially different levels. And so they're on Habel/level Morning.
Right.
And so like there's like a whole clan of cats.
Sounds like there's a lot of clans.
Yes,
too.
each Habel has their own clan of cats. And the Habel Morning's clan is the Soft Paws?
I don't remember. I had to look, but
So I think it's Soft Paws. led by Maul, and Roll is his companion. And I think Jim Butcher totally used Mouse as inspiration.
Do you think so?
Yeah, as inspiration on here. For those who haven't read Jim Butcher's Dresden Files, not Mouse, Mister.
Oh, okay.
Mister is Harry Dresden's cat, and he's like this huge tomcat. And Roll, I totally pictured Mister this whole time. I was like, that's totally Mister. But he's a huge A cat. I think at one point, I don't know if it says it now or later, but I think he weighs like 30 pounds.
Holy crap.
So he's a big boy.
Yeah, dang. That definitely is a cat that...
But he's not fat.
Right, but I mean, like, I was just going to say, like, if he was a cat 30 pounds in here, we'd be like, your cat needs to lose weight. Unless he'd be like a mountain lion or something.
But it's about cats and humans have an interesting relationship in this series. Yes. Humans kind of view cats as like the just vermin. Beasts and like barely above vermin.
Yeah.
And cats are kind of like aloof and do their own thing.
Which is really interesting to me, just since in this story, they're not just like regular cats running around. They're like a sentient species who has their own, like, they have their own clans, they have their own hierarchy, and they can communicate. They can actually speak.
Yeah, they have their own language. So it's cat
so
language,
like, it's interesting that they would. I guess maybe it's not that interesting. There's always like some race that people don't like. So I guess it's the cats.
Yes.
But I would definitely be like, I'll be your friend.
Yeah, but the cats live in like the ventilation tunnels and kind of keep to themselves. They do kind of work. They do have like I don't want to say a treaty, but kind of like a loose agreement with the humans that the cats do a lot to hunt.
The actual vermin, like
the actual vermin, like
was it rats or mice that they mentioned?
I think they mentioned rats, but it's also a lot to do with like surface creatures, like smaller surface creatures. The humans also have a guild they're called verminositors, and they also kind of go in the ventilation shafts and make sure that there's no super dangerous surface creatures there. But the cats kind of take care of the smaller ones. The verminositors kind of deal with like the slightly bigger ones. But the cats in this are quite vicious.
Yes.
We learn later on that when they go to fight and go to battles, they actually put on steel spurs and spikes, and that's what they claw with that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's pretty crazy. But yeah, Roll is totally this. If you could, like, a cat could talk, like, this is what the cat would say.
Right.
It's like Roll's like super arrogant and like haughty, and like everything revolves around him. And
right.
But he's also just a kitty. Because like him and Bridget are really close, and Bridget will like snuggle him and he'll like purr and
he still does like he does all the classic things. It's just added on that he's a huge cat and he can communicate. He doesn't just meow and purr and whatever.
Yes.
Except for it probably sounds like to that people who don't speak cat. But it's awesome.
Yeah, but we're introduced to Bridget because she's hiding from her dad. Because even though they're not like officially nobles, they still Bridget's dad still wants her to honor the noble tradition of doing a year of service, I think, or 2 years, a year of service in the Tower Guard, and Bridget doesn't want to go.
Oh, I thought I was getting it. Maybe I missed it, but I was thinking it was everyone like had kids who would go into the Guard, not just like the noble people.
I think whoever wants to join the Guard can, but I think it's like the nobles view it as like an obligation.
Okay.
Which is how Bridget's dad was like pressuring her.
Yeah. So we get like an opposite story with Bridget. When we start off with Gwen, she's like, "I'm going to the Guard and you can't stop me," and she's like literally hiding because she's like, "I don't want to go."
Yeah, she's like, I don't want it. It sucks. But then Maul shows up and he's like, I've decided that we're going to be noble too, and as such, I need to send a representative to the Tower Guard. So he sends Roll, and that really comforts Bridget. She's like, okay, I'll go with my kid.
And Roll is even like, you should go.
Yeah. Roll was like, you should, like, your dad's telling you to do this, like, you got to do it.
He was definitely way more on board.
Yeah.
She was.
But yeah, it's pretty. Roll has some pretty funny one-liners later on where, because we also get a perspective from Roll, and we kind of get like, as he's observing humans, like how stupid he thinks they're doing. He's like humans are so stupid. Like they're so lucky that they have a cat to look after them.
Right.
It's really funny. Like constantly like bags on him. And even Bridget's like, you're so arrogant, and like I can't even believe you. And he's like, yes.
Right. Doesn't
really
even try to be like, no. Like, yep.
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, that takes us to the end of chapter 3, where Bridget decides, yes, she's going to go to the Tower Guard, or Spire Guard, and Roll is going to come with her.
we get back to Gwen Dolin.
Gwen.
And she's now with the guard, and she's like, they're doing like a morning workout.
Yeah, she does not like PT.
And she's whining like a classic rich person.
Yeah, she's like, I don't see the point because they're running laps. And she's like, I don't see this. And we meet another character, her cousin. Benedict Sorlin, who is what's called a warrior born, who kind of seems like he has a cat-like traits. So he has like the slit eyes. And like later when he's fighting, they mention that he lets out a lion-like roar.
Okay.
When he's like really.
Yeah, so that fighting, adds more. So. I was trying to classify this book when I was reading it. Like, this is just a science fiction, but it's definitely a sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah, and the warriorborn kind of have like an interesting relationship with the other humans, because the warriorborn definitely have a place in society, but it's not a very high or prestigious place. Like Gwen mentions in her thoughts several times, I don't know if it's in these chapters or later, but she's like, because Benedict is warriorborn, like he'll never be an official member of the Lancaster house, even though he's associated with it. And warriorborns are kind of always just viewed as soldiers and brutes and not really good for much else, because they are supernaturally strong, quick. They can see really well, and they can hear really well and smell really well. So they're pretty much like a cat. Except I think they look like
they're super soldiers.
I think they look like humans, but they're like taller, stronger, and have like this cat eyes.
Yeah. This is totally this classic where like the normal people have just come up with all these reasons to think that everyone else who's not like them is inferior in one way or another, which bugs the crap out of me.
So, yeah.
And we also, this is where we find out that, Gwen and Bridget are in the same. I don't know if they probably have a bunch of different groups. They probably can't take all of the new recruits in one area if this spire is as big as they've made it sound.
I think it makes it seem like it's all the nobles.
Yeah.
Because there's a little bit of tiff where some of the nobles start kind of making fun of and teasing Bridget.
Yeah.
But Bridget's kind of like, she can handle herself. She kind of takes the route of like, she just doesn't care. She's just going to tell the truth. Like, she calls one of the noblemen an ass.
Yeah.
She's like, you are an ass. And he's like, excuse me, what did you say? And she's like, sorry, you are an ass.
That was one of my favorite parts. Like, totally patronizing, like he's an idiot.
And I like how Jim Butcher writes the character of Gwen, because we talked about this a lot on this podcast, where like there's a common theme in a lot of books of like the chosen farm boy. There's also another one, the arrogant, beautiful princess. And a lot of times the arrogant, beautiful princess gets what she wants, and always, whatever she does, like if she sets her mind to it, she can do it, and it like always kind of works out. Like you see this a lot in Wheel of Time with specifically the character Elaine. Like she has like this, she turns like on this like noble thing, and she's like poised and does all these things, and it kind of seems to work out. But the way that he writes Gwen, or the way that Jim Butcher writes Gwen, I really liked, because Gwen does that. She tries to intervene and tries to do things, but she often makes the situation worse when she thinks that she's making it better.
Right.
And I really like how he painted that this arrogant noblewoman actually isn't as smart or savvy as she thinks she is, but she's more just brutish, spoiled, and used to getting what she wants, which doesn't always equal the thing. Because anyways, Bridget's having like this verbal confrontation with this guy that's interested in whatever. But so Gwen tries to intervene, things escalate, and then the dude challenges Bridget to a duel. And then Bridget turns to Gwen. She's like, why'd you intervene like that? You made it way worse. And Gwen was like, what are you talking about? Like, you were so helpless. I had to help you. And Bridget was like, no, you flippin' idiot. Like, you made it worse. Like, because of you. Like, if you hadn't shown up and he had to, like, defend his honor in front of you, this high house Lancaster, things would have been fine. He would have just ignored me or maybe, like, shoved me or something.
But his little pride got hurt.
Now I had to freaking duel him, and it's all your fault. And Gwen's like, I don't understand. I helped you. And even Benedict's like, oh, Gwen, you're so stupid. Like, you think you're helping, but you're not. Like, you're just this idiot, spoiled rich girl
right.
who thinks that she's super smart. And not to say that she isn't smart, because she does seem like she's smart, but she just assumes that she's the only one that can actually make something work and make something happen. So she tends to stick her nose in places where maybe she shouldn't, and she tends to be like really arrogant and haughty when she tries to solve problems and it doesn't always work out
Right.
the way that she wants.
Oh, there was something I was going to mention about Bridget. She's not warrior born, but she is not exactly small.
No, she is big.
I can't
for a
remember if it
girl.
was it in this one or is it one she's kind of training that they mentioned how big she is, but
I don't know if they mentioned it specifically, but yeah, she's big and she is strong. She's kind of like the farm girl kind of strong, where she grew up in the vattery working with her dad, and they have to constantly lift up huge slabs of meat that weigh hundreds of pounds, and she's just been doing that every day for who knows how long. So she's kind of like that natural strength, and I think her family's just kind of big people.
because it didn't really make anything. There was nothing I noticed when we first met Bridget that was like, oh, she's big. But,
Yeah, I don't think it really mentioned it,
but it seems like she's not like super powered like maybe Gwen's cousin is. I already forgot his name. She's farm girl tough, but she is taller than the average woman.
yeah.
Oh, that's about it. Other than I like to say that I hate Reginald and I hope he dies.
Who's Gretchen?
I said Reginald.
Oh,
Oh, and another thing that kind of sucks for Bridget is she's in like in a lose-lose situation. I think they talk about this later too, but she pretty much has to she has to let Reginald win because there's a possibility that if she wins and like hurts him permanently or kills him, like his house will retaliate and go after her father. So she's like, no, save him.
yeah. But
So it sucks for her.
Yeah, Benedict kind of steps in a little bit and offers to help kind of try to prepare Bridget. Jumping ahead a little bit, after a little bit, some things happen. They set the duel for like a week or two away.
Yeah.
And so in that time, Benedict starts to train Bridget. And Bridget has absolutely no fighting experience, nothing, and it definitely shows. Like, she kind of struggles with the gauntlet training and sword training in this school. There's not any like specific examples. It kind of just mentions that she's not very good at those things. And
Right.
so Benedict's kind of like trying to get a baseline of where she's at. And he tells her to try to pick me up. And she does so almost easily. Like, she picks him up and throws him over her shoulder, which is apparently a big deal because apparently warrior borns are also super dense and like weigh a bunch. And they're like, wow, I can't believe you're able to lift me up. Like, you should. And then they decide that because she's so strong and she's the one that was challenged to the duel, she's going to choose the unarmed combat. So they're essentially going to wrestle.
Duke it out.
Yeah, or duke it out or something. And so that's where they kind of focus their training. It's very basic, which I like. I like that they didn't be like... And then Bridget took to it super naturally and then kicked Reginald butt. And it was amazing and it was the most wonderful thing. Because it's like kind of like, she's really struggling. We're just going to teach you the basics so that you just don't die
Yes.
on accident. Because even though they're like... Duels are supposed to be like non-lethal, but sometimes people get carried away.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to be prepared for that. And Roel's perspective on this is really funny.
Yes.
'Cause
I
he's
thought
like-
it was interesting before, because I don't know what you're going to get into, but when in this training session, the first one we see, when she picks him up, like, Roel shows up, and then, like, he whispers in Bridget's ear, and he's warning Bridget about, I need to find his name, about Gwen and Benedict. Like, they're dangerous people. So I'm kind of curious if that's, like, foreshadowing to be like, Gwen and Benedict.
No, I think even Bridget's thing was, it wasn't that he was warning. He was like, it was more like a respect.
Oh, okay.
Like
it felt like a
they're
warning to me, but that
dangerous,
would
like
make more
they're-
sense. Okay.
Like they're
Because they don't feel like
I think
the dangerous part.
I think Bridget even mentions that when her perspective, like, he's even like, oh, he said that not in the sense of like I should be wary of them, but like that he respected them.
Yeah. Is this the chapter where he also... Because I thought this whole time up until this chapter that Roel was speaking English. And he just...
Yeah, I
But-
think it's kind of like made it seem like that way, but no.
but
it's
this one was
totally-
like, no, like the cats have their own language. And Benedict and...
Benedict can understand it, but can't really speak it.
Yeah. But they're both...
But-
Benedict and Gwen are impressed. Like, oh, wow, you speak cat. I want to know what that sounds like. Are they just like meowing all weirdly?
I don't even know.
It's got to be the craziest thing to hear someone just talk to a cat in cat. Or maybe GM came up with a whole other language. It's not just...
Who knows? But yeah, when Roel's watching them fight, he's kind of like, this is stupid. Like, I don't even remember. I don't remember any specifics that he says, but he's kind of like, why are they doing this? Like, you guys are stupid.
Yeah, there were some parts that I thought were funny. What he thing he was thinking to himself when he was observing, and that just made me laugh, is they're like practicing falling. Like Benedict is trying to teach teach Bridget how to fall to take less damage, but he's like, that doesn't make any sense. If you fall, just simply land on your feet.
I'm trying to think, 'cause another cat comes up and starts talking to Benedict, and like, her name is Merle. Oh yeah, because she's right here. So she's like, the other girl cat kind of looks and she's like, "What are they doing?" And then Roll says, "They mean to teach the little mouse to fight." Oh, little mouse is
We didn't mention that.
little mouse is Bridget's cat name, which is apparently a great honor to have a cat name.
They give her
Anyways,
Little Mouse.
So they're watching them kind of like spar and like learning how to fall, like you said, and kind of grappling. And Merle's like, "What are they doing?" And then he's like, "They mean to teach little mouse to fight." And then Merle's like, "I see. Have they begun yet?" And Merle's like, "They seem to think so."
Yeah.
So they're like, "Fucking idiots."
Yeah. Oh, and it's interesting. Merle is there to deliver a massage, which it becomes. I was confused by the message. She delivers a message from Roll's. Oh my gosh, I already forgot how you say his name. Rowell.
Roll.
It is Roll. She delivers a message to Roll from his dad, saying like, "Do your duty." It's like, okay. And we learn later what that was.
Anyway, I'm just reading this conversation again because it's just funny how they just talk like they just think that humans are so completely like inferior, just kind of like stupid. Like, so like Merle's kind of asking like, "Why are they going to fight?" And he's like, "A young man aimed words of pain at her father, and in reply, she slapped his ears with her words. Now they plan to fight." And Merle's like, "They plan to fight?" And Merle said, mystified. So she's like, "What the crap?" She's like, "Why did she not go to find him in his sleep and fight him then?" And Merle's like, "I have no idea. But he will not find her in her sleep. If he tries, I will rip out his eyes." And Merle's just like, sensible.
They have a more simple way of looking at this. Just simply kill him. Just fight right now. Don't go through him.
So it's just kind of funny.
I wonder if the cat clans are quicker at making decisions. That sounds like they don't politic and crap as much.
Then we kind of get we kind of already explained this, but this is when they get into like explaining why Gwen has to lose. Or not Gwen, Bridget has to lose. Kind of like the political ramifications if she doesn't, and she can't humiliate him, but she also wants to like kind of hold her own. It's just kind of like this fine balance, and they're all kind of like a little nervous, like, okay, I hope we can do it. But
let's get into the last chapter.
All right, we're back to Grimm. I didn't really mention how they were able to make it back to Spire Albion because they're back, but their ship is very damaged, practically beyond repair. Their main lift crystal is cracked and breaking. And then there's this other fleet guy, his name's Commodore Hamilton Rook, who's trying to manipulate Grimm and take his crystal, essentially. Because even a broken crystal is still valuable, and he's trying to manipulate Grimm, and Grimm's not taking it. He's like, "I'll friggin' kill you." And Rook's like, "How dare you? I'm a dang officer in the fleet." Grimm's like, "I don't give a crap."
Right.
Like, and then luckily things are kind of stalled, and Bayard shows up. Bayard is someone who respects Grimm, who's also respectable, and he's in the thing, and they're kind of talking. I'm trying to remember exactly.
They seem to be friends a little bit. Grimm likes him better at least than Rook.
Oh yeah. So Rook keeps pushing Grimm. He's like, "I'm gonna have you." First he's like, "Oh, I'll buy the crystal," and he's like, "Oh no, I'll have it. Like, it's mine. Like, you suck. I'm gonna take your crystal."
And he's given like a really crappy price at first. Apparently, like it's just not worth very much.
And then Grimm punches him.
Slaps him.
Oh, it's a slap.
Yeah. Which makes it even funnier to me.
Yeah, slapped him across the face, and he's like, "You suck!" And then he slaps him again. It's like
you can't do that. And that's when
it's like, "If you threaten to take my home and destroy the livelihood of my family again," talking about his ship and his crew, he's like, "I will be inclined to kill you where you stand."
And in the beginning of this, he was even like thinking to himself, like, it's in poor taste to kill him, to act out in violence now, and just kill him where he stood. So he resisted, but now he's like, if you do this, I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, and then Rook kind of issues some threats, and then Grimm's getting mad and like.
It's kind of like this whole little bit of a politicking with them, in which Grimm is able to outmaneuver Rook. And it's like, says, if you do this, well, I'm going to do this. And like, well, I'm going to do this. Well, I'm going to do this. And then
Yeah.
it's a little more complicated than that. But
Then Grimm leaves, and then that's when Bayard steps in, and they're kind of talking some more. It's kind of hard to talk about these kind of chapters because there's just so much dialogue, and there's like,
yeah,
I don't want to go like word from it, but we kind of get that there's like a mutual respect between these two, Bayard and Grimm. Bayard kind of understands that Grimm's a good guy, even though he was dishonorably discharged, and they kind of understand that. But as they're walking and kind of talking in these tunnels, they hear like a really weird noise, and
they both react like out of instinct and draw their swords, but
like it's full of whispering sounds. But like I said, both their instincts knew that they're about to be ambushed, and so they both go back to back and draw their swords. And then the chapter ends with just, and then something streaked in the dark, and a cannonball of howling hot agony hurled into his chest. Grimm's chest, that is.
Right. So something happened. Maybe it was a cat. We did kind of skip over a little one small part that maybe we should talk about, but it's the second part of the chapter from Raoul's perspective, where they go to eat breakfast after they train, and they are approached by the second of, what's his name? I already forgot Reginald. And then it's like, I only wanted to point out that it seems like Raoul's duty that his father sent a message about it was to be, I guess, watchful over Bridget, but in this case, like the cat is going to be the second, which I thought was interesting, and apparently it's never happened before, or very...
Yeah, his mission is to, like, the cats want to be recognized as a people of their own and like a noble place of their own. Right. And that's Raoul's main mission, is to establish that. And so the guy comes and he's asking who's going to be the second, and Benedict and Gwen are both like, me.
Yeah.
But then Raoul attacks the second guy, knocks him down, and is like, I am the second. I am the son of Maul of Clan Light Paws.
Yeah. And he seemed to get like super pissed. It said that he like let out a yowl or whatever the cats do when they're super mad, went after the other guy's second. Yeah. I thought it was funny. They have a different set of rules in their cat society.
Very true.
So we picked a really good spot to end.
Yep.
Always good to end on a cliffhanger. Keeps us all reading. Did you look into James's son? I forgot his name. Not James. No, his name is James. James Butcher.
Yeah.
Jim's son. Did you read anything about his book at all? Okay.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. We just learned that Jim Butcher has a son. His name is James, and he also wrote a book. I thought that would be interesting to talk about for one sentence. Just get that out there.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I don't even know what it's called.
I just know that I saw it. I've already forgot it. Well, yeah, we are feeling a lot better about this book than our last one.
Yeah, so far so good. Jim Butcher, he usually writes pretty fast-paced action books. I think if you're familiar with the Harry Dresden Dresden Files or Furies of Calderon or any of his other books, I think this is very on par with how he writes those, which is kind of fast-paced, a lot of action, a lot of peril, a lot of mystery, trying to figure out what's going on the fly, working kind of from a disadvantage in a lot of situations, but kind of pulling through. Very similar writing style, but if you like his other books, you'll definitely like this one so far. Like I said, I've already finished it, and I think it's a good book all around.
So you would recommend it?
I would definitely recommend it, yeah. For sure.
I'm also liking this a lot better. I'm really enjoying the writing so far. I'm already obviously a fan of Jim Butcher, as stated, and it's really nice to get back into one of his books. I've had this book on my TBR for a long time, so.
It's a good one.
Well, come hang out with us next week when we get farther into this book. See what happens to Grimm and Bridget. Maybe we'll see the duel next week. We'll catch y'all later.
See ya. It's over.